In contrast to the last film I talked about, A Ghost Story, which was a quiet meditation on life and death, this week we have Dunkirk, a loud, experiential film, but like Lowery's film, Nolan also uses minimalist dialogue and uses the visuals to convey information to the audience. These two films equally have quite a bit in common, but are also very different from another. Now with this film, it is important to note how I saw it. I unfortunately did not get the quote-unquote full experience in IMAX and 70mm. I will be trying to do that soon, but my first screening was on a significantly smaller screen than most theaters, and in 35mm, which was poorly projected on a flickering, shaky visuals sort of way. Some of you may say that my thoughts therefore are not valid because I didn't see the film the way it was meant to be seen. But like 2013's Gravity, I believe that a film should be great no matter how it's seen. Though I do try to make an effort to see these films in the best possible way that I can, and I will be seeing it in IMAX 70mm projection very soon. Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk is marvelous, however, even with shaky projection on a smaller screen. It's this weird in-between of a war film and a horror film. There are a lot of things, however, that Nolan does that battles the cliches of both of those genres. It's a World War II film where you never see a German face. You'll see the planes, but you never get a look at them as people. It dehumanizes their actions in a visual way. We'll get to the visual storytelling later on, but it's so damn unique. Also, unlike many war films and horror films, there's barely any blood or gore. It pushes the atrocities to the wayside in lieu of the greater goal of just surviving, getting as far away from that pain as you can get. You see movies like Hacksaw Ridge where there's so much violence in a film about survival and saving people's lives, it doesn't necessarily seem out of place since this was indeed what happened, but it gets to a point where it seems like they're glorifying the violence just a little bit. This was just an interesting play on that trope, with a film that doesn't linger on the corpses. They're in there and they're a part of the film without a doubt, but Nolan managed to make a film about Dunkirk without showing off any blood and without showing an enemy's face to try and get us to sympathize with the Nazis in any possible way, never giving them any sort of platform to present them as human beings, instead turning the Germans from people into just the machinery that they use. The film also plays a lot like a silent film. The dialogue is so sparsely used, and yet the movie never feels like we aren't learning about our characters, and the film never feels intentionally quiet. Quite the opposite, actually. The sound design of this film is really what leads me to say that it's in part a horror film. The sound of the German planes practically act as a jump scare, but never a cheap one. In fact, as a horror film, the jump scares are so much more effective in this film than most actual horror movies. But the sound design is very good in this film, and everything just felt real. It's like you're actually there with the characters that the film is following. There's not a lot being said vocally, but there's never a dull moment in Dunkirk, thanks to the extremely well-designed sound and the amount that you're able to be told visually through the film, which, again, we're getting to that. One of the few complaints I actually have with the film is that while the dialogue is used so sparingly to great effect, the dialogue that is said doesn't seem entirely natural. Nolan's films tend to have a little struggle with human emotion and what the characters say, and that's fine, it's part of his style, but I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't a flaw in any sort of way at all. Now Nolan, as a director, he works his ass off with this movie. It's absolutely incredible what he does behind the camera with this film. The way he conveys his information and ideas to the audience is so intensely visual. It rewards an audience paying attention to the movie. It doesn't treat you like you need anything explained to you. His best skill with this film is maintaining three narratives almost entirely with just the people in the film. The dialogue in his films may not be the best at capturing people all the time, but just the way that Nolan commands huge casts of people, and using the texture of the world around them and the looks on their faces especially, he's able to communicate everything you need to know about the people that the film is following. Striking visuals of seeming hopelessness and quiet, tense moments, only for loud bursts of violence to bring all of that to an end. It's visual storytelling through and through. You might say that the film's only main struggle is survival, a subject the film is all about and covers all of these different means of survival to a point where you find it repetitive. However, I think each of the scenarios covers a different idea on the overall theme of survival, warfare, life, and death. While we're talking about the visuals, the use of the cameras that the cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema uses are so well implemented that, with the sound design of the film and Nolan's screen command, really make you feel like you're there. To a point where even in the weird scenario that I had in my screening, I was sucked in. I'm sure by now that you've also heard of the intercutting 3 narratives told in the film and how separated in time they all are. The land mission is shown over the course of a week, by sea a day, and by air a single hour. The 3 stories play well into each other, and it's edited well so that you never feel robbed of a story that's on a cliffhanger. It always feels like time is of the essence, despite the different periods of time wherein the stories take place. And it's so interesting to see that the stories tie into each other as we get closer and closer towards the end. You're always on the edge of your seat, and the pacing is so brisk, but also so incredibly tense. It's likely Nolan's best paced movie, thanks to a significantly shorter runtime than his films are used to. It helps to keep things going along, and there is never a wasted minute on screen. I don't have much to say on the actual writing that I haven't already said since. To me, the story is told best through the direction and cinematography than the screenplay itself. I feel like if you gave this script to someone like Mel Gibson, it would likely lose some of the unique and clever breaking of genre norms that it has. I will say, however, thank God we don't get cheesy, schmaltzy backstories of who these soldiers are fighting for back at home. I'm glad that this movie just says to the audience that these are people fighting the good side of the war, and you should want to see them make it out alive solely on the fact that these are good people fighting a difficult war. I've had issues with this method of storytelling before, but in those cases, the actions those characters take don't make me want to see them come out of it okay. Here, it works perfectly. Dunkirk is just an absolute marvel of a film that I enjoyed thoroughly. The performances are excellent as they can sell you on so much with just a facial expression. Nolan's direction is masterful, the camera work is stunning, the editing is tight, the story itself is one of the greatest ideas for a historical war film that I'm surprised hasn't been covered all that much. It's an interesting scenario because at the end of the day, the mission isn't a glaring success. That's all I'm willing to say without getting into spoilers for people who don't know the real-life war story, but the film's conclusion is so murky on its moral, and I really love that aspect of Nolan's films. Just about everything in this film is masterful and done to near perfection. You should enjoy it on the widest screen possible. I do plan on doing so this weekend, and if I wind up enjoying the film even more and I have more ideas to think about, once I get a better experience of seeing it, I might post a quick update video with additional thoughts. But for now, this is still an easy recommendation that I can make to just about everybody.